Hello everybody and welcome back to another My Porch Print Tutorials. This is Kyra and today I'm going to be walking you through part 2 of the Daydream in Green Junk Journal. If you haven't already seen part 1 where we make the cover or the flip through, I will have those linked down in the description box below. But today we are going to be creating our signatures and sewing those in and finishing up the inside of the cover. So I've already gone ahead and made my signatures by printing out papers from the Daydream in Green journal kit along with the basic essential journal pages. Number 2, so I will have those down in the description box and also linked in the comment section if you're looking for those. And I also used a couple of coffee dyed papers as well. My second signature is actually just all coffee dyed papers, but if you don't have coffee dyed papers, we do have coffee and script paper packs that you could print off from our Etsy shop and use instead. And then I just sort of mixed them up to create 4 totally different signatures. I find that 4 signatures works best for my 2-inch spine. And I did print them all front and back. They're all paper, no cardstock. And I cut off the borders, and that's kind of just how I did that. Now for decorating your pages, there are multiple things you could do. Here I tore all of these edges and distressed them with distress ink, so that's one thing you could do. Another would be to use a bunch of different like ribbons and lace in various colors and textures and give it really like a homemade sort of messy feel if that's something you want to go for. The third option would be to do something very similar but to use like focus on a specific color or texture. Like these are all kind of either beige and black and they all have sort of this like ripped edge here, this like tasseled edge. So that's kind of something you could think about, or you could just leave them as is. We do add a decorative border to all of our papers, so you could just leave them how they come when you print them out. For this one specifically, I wanted to focus on keeping things really clean and organized, so I decided to stick with all like cream colored ribbon, all of it lacy. I didn't want it to stick out from the pages too much. I tried to keep everything kind of an equal length and spacing, just my personal preference here. And these ribbons that I'm using today, I have this one from Celebrate It, and then I also have some ribbon from Simplicity, and both of these come from Walmart, these brands. So if you're looking for it, that's where you will find those ribbons. And then the last ribbon that I have is Merchant 41. And that comes from, like that brand comes from Hobby Lobby. So I will try to have links to those stores down below so you can look for the ribbon if you want. And then instead of just using whatever thread is in the machine like I usually do, I actually picked up some teal colored thread to use to sew my pages and sew the ribbon to the pages today. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera, and it's real simple. I'm just placing a strip of ribbon on the edge of the paper and sewing it down or gluing it down. So this is what that looks like when it's finished. So for like the purled ribbons here, I just put them on the front of the signatures and I glued them down since I couldn't sew through the purls. And then with the other lace, I either sewed or glued them down to the edge and tried to focus on keeping them all like an equal length so they weren't sticking out too far from the book. Some of the pages I added some decorative sewing to, just like for fun, things like that. Some of the ribbons I only sewed along one edge to make kind of like little tuck spot, things like that. Just kind of had some fun with it, sort of just flipping through here. And if you are flipping through your signatures, make sure you go through and make sure that all the pages are right side up before you sew them into your book. That's really important. So I'm just going to kind of go through here and just give you a little look through of what I did. I do have some other tutorials where I kind of show sewing the ribbon on, so I will link those down below as well if you are interested. If that's something you really want to see, I could also do like a quick separate video on that, so just let me know if you're confused. I feel like it's fairly self-explanatory, but if it's not, I would be more than happy to show you how to sew ribbons onto your pages. Sort of showing what I mean. This is one of those ribbons where I sewed like one side and left the other one open for a tuck spot. You'll kind of see a little bit more of that when I do the decorating video for the next video. And just adding like different types of stitching I find gives things a nice texture. Little details like that sort of stand out and make your journal feel sort of complete. Alright, just kind of flipping through here, just in case anyone wants to see it, see what I did. Like this one I just glued on instead of sewing. You can always glue if you don't want to sew, or if you don't have a sewing machine, you can just glue your ribbons on. There's no shame in that. Alright, so once you have all of your signatures sort of organized how you like, which pages you want in which order, and they're all right side up, we can go ahead and attach them to the inside of our journal. So for that, I'm going to be using our hidden spine template, which this is available in our shop, and I will link that down below, but it's also available as a freebie in our Facebook group if you'd like to join our group for that. And I printed a decorative paper on it, and then I printed that same pattern on 2 other sheets. So the template is on cardstock, and then these other decorative papers are just on regular paper. And it's important when you're picking a pattern to try to pick one that is non-directional so that they sort of seamlessly blend together like so. We're going to be using up like the papers to cover up the wings of the template. So I will show you that a little bit as we go. Alright, so to sew my pages in, I have this book binding kit, which I will also have linked down below. And it comes with waxed thread, but I'm going to be using a different kind of thread today that sort of matches the color of my journal a little bit better. And I'm going to be taking one of the larger needles from the kit to sew the signatures in, so just finding one that works here. You can use whichever needle works best for you. And then it also comes with this awl, and we will be using this to poke the holes in our signature. So if you don't have this, find some sort of a needle. Like the sewing needle would have worked probably just as well. And once we have all of that together, we will be cutting out our template just like this. And it has these wings that you need to fold front and back like this. So make sure that you do that now. It'll be easier than when your signatures are sewed in. And this little template here, we are going to be folding along the dotted line like this. And now we can go ahead and poke out our holes. So they're already marked, so I'm just going to go ahead and poke these 3 out here in this little guide. And for the larger one, it has 5 holes for 5 signatures, but since I only have 4, I'm going to be making my own holes in between the spaces of the holes that are currently here. You could use a marker that stands out a little more. I'm just using a black pen, and you can see I've gone ahead and made them like even spacing, so we'll just do that down the line of all of the holes here, just like this. And now we can go ahead and poke those out, and that'll give us even spaced holes for our signatures. Just like this. And you can see it from the back. Alright, so now that we have our template all set up, we can go ahead and start poking holes in our signatures. So I've already attached one signature. I'm going to work on the second now, which is just my coffee dyed papers here, so it's a little bit easier to see what I'm doing. And you're going to open it up to the center fold. So after you fold your signatures in half, you'll open it up and place the guide right in that crease. And I'm using bulldog clips to secure it. So you want to line up the guide sort of like right in the center. These coffee dyed papers are slightly larger than all of my other papers, so it doesn't line up perfectly, but when you use it on a regular signature, it should sort of line up with the top and bottom of it. And then using the awl, I'm going to poke those holes out, just using my guide here. And then I'm going to remove the guide, but leave the bulldog clips to hold everything in place so the papers don't slide around. And then taking my needle and my thread, I find that going 1, 2.5, 3.5 times over my, like the width of my paper gives me enough thread. And you're going to want to sew it through your needle, like thread it through, and leave one long tail and one shorter tail. And I'm going to start by going through the back of my signature, and this will mean that the knot will be in the back rather than on the inside of my pages, so it'll hide the knot. It's up to you if you want the knot showing or not, so not showing or not. That's silly. Okay, so going through the center hole in the back of our template and then going through the center hole of our signatures like this. And we're going to pull it just enough that there is still a good amount of thread sticking out the back. It's really important that you leave this tail. If this gets pulled through, you're going to have to start over. So make sure that this is always sticking out of the back of your hidden spine. Sorry if I sound a little stuffed up. I think I'm getting a cold here. Everyone in my family is sick right now. All right, so going through this top hole now, and this is called a pamphlet stitch if anyone's curious. We are doing a pamphlet stitch right now. And again, through the top hole of our hidden spine, just like this. So now you've got these two pieces here. Pulling this through, but being careful not to pull it all the way out. And now we're gonna go through the bottom. So switching views here so it's a little easier to see. We're gonna go from the center to the top to the bottom hole through both the template and the signature again. Just like that. Pulling that through. And then we are going to go back through the center of our signature. So for this part, just be a little careful. Sometimes I've sewn through the previous thread, so just be careful not to do that. Going through that center hole in the signature and the template. And then when you pull it through, you can go ahead and remove your needle from the thread. And now you should have plenty of thread to tie a knot. So when we do this, you want to pull it pretty tight, not too tight that you tear it, but just tight enough that it's taut. So you can kind of test the tautness by running a finger over the stitching. And once it feels pretty tight, we're going to move one thread to either side of this like center stitch. And it's very important that you make sure that the center stitch is in the middle of both of these loose ends, because we're going to tie the knot on top of that. If you don't do that, the knot can pull through the book and your signature will come right out. So make sure that you have that thread on either side of the stitch, and then we're just going to tie several knots here, just like this, and cut off the remaining ends. And you don't have to cut them too close to the knot because we're not going to see them anyway. So it's actually better to give yourself more thread than less. I cut it pretty close here. I would recommend leaving a little more so that the knots don't come undone. All right, and that should be your signatures. As you can see, we've got two going now, and nice and taut, and they're holding in here. So we can go ahead and remove those bulldog clips now. And now our signature is attached to our hidden spine, and it should work just like a regular book. Now, between my signatures, there was still quite a bit of space. If you really fill your journal, that'll kind of get hidden, but I decided to go ahead and sew in just a couple of loose pages to fill this space here in between my signatures. So I'm just going to go ahead and take 1 or 2 coffee dyed pages and sew them in here just the exact same way that we sewed in our signature. So I'll go ahead and show that real quick. So I can already see my template holes there. If you can't see them, you'll want to mark them and make sure that they are equal with the rest of the holes that you made for your other signatures. Otherwise the signature will be like too high or too low, if that makes sense. So going ahead and cutting my string and marking holes, making a hole in the signature if you don't already have them. And then we are going to be sewing and attaching those spare pages and tying it off, same way we did with our other signature. And now, as you can see, there is a lot less space showing, and it kind of just makes your book look a little bit cleaner. And it's okay if you still have a little bit of space showing, because as you fill your journal with things, it's going to get like fuller and fuller and kind of hide that, so don't worry too much. When sewing this second one in though, I noticed that this hole was really close to one of the previous holes I made, and I was worried it would tear. So I'm going to do sort of like a little fix here. So underneath the top hole, I'm going to poke a second one, and on top of the bottom hole, I'm going to poke a second one like this. Just like that, making 4 holes. And I'm going to use my template here to cut out the top and bottom holes of this page. Don't poke a hole in the middle like I did. I just did it out of habit. We only need the top and bottom holes for this. And to line it up, I'm going to thread my needle through my paper and then through this top hole here like so. And that'll line up my paper. So now I can just pull the needle out and hold it in place. I'm going to poke a hole into this second hole that I made here into the page like this. And that's going to make sure that those are lined up. Do the same thing for the bottom here. Just poking out that secondary hole. All right. And now how I'm going to do this, I don't know if there's a name for this stitch. I'm just adding like a single stitch to the top and bottom of the page. So I'm going to just pull a little piece of thread through the top hole and then loop it back through that second pair of holes that we made like this. Leaving that spare tail out and then removing the needle and having 2 tails like this. As you can see, we just created a single stitch up here. And I'm going to then tie a knot in the back, and that should hold the page in. I haven't tried this before. I've never tried it with a larger signature, so if you do try that, let me know how it works. I find that it works perfectly fine for a single page though, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do that, and that way I don't have to poke a hole in the center and potentially rip another signature out. So just a kind of a quick fix for you if you're having a problem with that. And then I just went ahead and did the same thing to the bottom here and glued a lace applique over the center to kind of hide that hole I made accidentally. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and attach my final signature and my final set of spare pages in here like this. And when we are done, we should have all 4 signatures and all of our spaces filled, and we should be ready to attach it into the journal cover. All right, so taking our cover and opening it up like this, we are going to be lining up our hidden spine with our actual spine, and then our creases should line up with the creases of the page. And it should go in just like this. We're going to glue it down, and it should just hold kind of in there like so. And this way you don't have to have any of your stitching for your pages showing on the outside of your book. So this works really well with this type of cover. Now I noticed that you could kind of see the paper showing on the top and bottom of the book from the hidden spine. So I decided to just go ahead and cut the hidden spine and trim it down so that it was less noticeable. So I'm just making a little cut here and then cutting the wings down as well. And you'll want to be really careful not to cut your papers while doing this, so be mindful of that. And as you can see, the paper is a lot less noticeable on the top and bottom here. So doing the same thing to the bottom of the book, just like this. And now I'm ready to sew it in. Or glue it in, excuse me. Woo! Struggling today. All right, and if you notice that your creases are not lining up properly, you can go ahead and take like a bone folder or something like that and recreate a crease here. I'm going to go ahead and do that since mine was slightly off. And then I am going to add glue all over it to the spine and the wings, and we are going to just hold it on the spine of our book and press those wings down onto the front and back cover like this. And then let it dry for a little bit, and it should hold all of your pages in just like this. Right, and if you're happy with it, make sure that you give it enough time to dry before you continue working with it. And it should look kind of like this. So now it's starting to look like a full journal here. We got all of our pages attached in, and now we just have to cover up the inside of our covers. So for that, I'm going to be taking those decorative papers from earlier that match the hidden spine, and we're going to be measuring whatever you want to cover on the inside cover. So for me, I'm matching is it the length or the width? The length of my pages, which would be 8.5. by the width of my cover. And for that, I think mine was like 5.5 or 6 inches. That'll be up to you. I decided I wanted like a little bit of the cover border showing, so mine's just a little bit smaller than that. It'll be different for everybody depending on what size your journal cover is, so cut it to fit your journal. And then I'm going over it with just a little bit of Distress ink in the color Antique Linen and gluing that in here, making sure it matches the top and bottom of my pages. And then I used a bone folder to press this edge sort of underneath the pages just a little bit, and that just makes it look a little bit like cleaner and a little more seamless here. So I'm just going to press that down and let that page dry. And then to sort of hide this border, I'm going to be going over it with just a little bit of ribbon, just gluing a small piece of decorative lace ribbon down. And there you go, that is the inside cover done. So we can now move to the back inside cover and do the exact same process. Of course, you could use cloth instead of paper or something like that. It's entirely up to you. This is just how I did mine. Alright, so that is going to finish today's tutorial. Now we have all of our signatures created and sewn into our book using the hidden spine template. We've got our covers, our inside covers decorated. So now we are ready to decorate the actual pages. So make sure that you subscribe and like, turn on notifications and all that so that you don't miss that video when it comes out. I will go ahead and start working on it right away. Otherwise, I hope you got some inspiration, and thank you so much for watching our tutorial and following along with us. We will see you next time. Bye!